Kiara, they say that it takes two to tango. On one side, you have the service providers. On the other side, you have the refugee. And what stands between them is those barriers. Could be a language, could be a culture, could be a trauma, and could be even the attitude of the refugee. But it might be a surprise for some, but most of the time the attitude is the main factor which prevents a refugee to integrate into a given society. The simple fact of accepting a refugee in New Zealand opens windows to so many opportunities and a better style of life. And it's up to the refugee to seize those opportunities and to embrace that style of life which is a way better than the one left behind. But most of us, we don't do that. We don't see those opportunities because of those barriers, and that's when the service providers has to come to support us in order to achieve. In my situation, I became a refugee when I was 5 years old. I moved with my family from Burundi to Rwanda, and I completed my primary school and secondary school in Rwanda, and I was one of the lucky people, few people, who received a UNHCR scholarship to go to uni. I completed my French master's degree in law, and I spent 2 years specializing in business law. After uni, I moved back to Rwanda, and I managed to establish a law firm, and I had 2 lawyers working for me, and at the same time I was managing a Canadian power company. And then the war started in Rwanda. They start killing each other, and then goes the genocide. We moved together with my wife and 2 kids and other family members back to Burundi. In Burundi, we couldn't even stay because they were killing each other. We moved again to Kenya, and from Kenya to New Zealand. We arrived in New Zealand, in Auckland, in February 1995. After 6 weeks spent in Mangere refugee center, we were relocated to Auckland, Northcote, with 3 assets. The first one was a caseworker from Refugee and Migrant at that time. And he was the first asset because of her zeal to help us achieve. The second asset we had was 3 volunteers. They were Catholic, like we are. They were so keen to help us, to move us around. They were doing their best, and they were the first Kiwi we were in contact with, and they were extraordinary. The third asset we have was my wife and I will to integrate into this society. And then what happened, we started, I was enrolled at AUT with the help of the Refugee and Migrant Service, but I couldn't stay there because after 2 months I realized I'm gonna spend 5 years learning English, and I couldn't wait. And then I quit, and I decided to self-train, to self-educate, to self-teach myself, self-teach in English, based on one principle. How will I teach someone French, someone who wants to learn French quickly? My resources were the French and English dictionary from AUT, the audio tape and books from the library, and the radio and the television to improve my listening skills. And then after 2 months, my wife and I were so ashamed to be on benefits. And then we decided to look for jobs. For her, it was so easy because of her language, administration, and accounting skills. she got a job quickly. For me, it was a big challenge. During the time I was spending in the library, I came to realize that the only job I could do was cleaning. And I started applying for cleaning jobs. I got declined because I couldn't communicate with people who were supposed to give me the job. And then, by luck, one company was desperate for cleaners. They hired me. And then came another challenge. I was spending 2 hours on a task, on 1 hour task. And most of the time I was missing the last bus to go home. And I had to walk from Greenfield College to Northcote. And then finally, you know, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. After 2 months, I was a professional cleaner. And I decided to apply for another cleaning job. I got the job. Meanwhile, I was improving in my English. And then after almost 1 year, I started applying to several jobs. And then I received a call from Countrywide Bank, who accepted to hire me after a test. But they told me that my English was so poor. But because I answered all the questions, anyway, in New Zealand, in America, in Africa, banking principles are all the same. Now, they gave me a chance, and I started with their legal department. And from that time, I moved to different banks. Now, after 20 years, am I connected to this society? Do I consider myself as a Kiwi? In my humble opinion, to be connected to any given society is to feel and share what is important for that society. In my first 5 years, I was not connected at all. I couldn't understand that a road fatality was considered to be a tragedy in this country, simply because I came from a continent where thousands are dying from malaria, hunger, and guns. Doesn't matter, they were dying, so I couldn't understand that. And I could also understand why people were jumping in each other in the name of rugby, because I was still connected to that beautiful game, soccer. And then I couldn't also understand why someone beating a dog was charged and was making the headlines, because I come from that area where dogs are not considered. And suddenly, my connection to this country, to New Zealand, which is my country now, came in an unexpected way. I was watching a rugby game between New Zealand and South Africa. In the middle of the game, I was so excited, wanting New Zealand to win. And then South African friends who were around me, they look at me, they say, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I say, "No, what are you doing?" And they say, "No, remember, you are black. Doesn't mean because you are black, you're supposed to support all blacks." And I told them, and I told them I'm a natural. And then from that moment, I share what is important with New Zealand. Everything happening to New Zealand, it happened to me. It affects me. Recently, I was concerned about a dog missing, a police dog missing. And then one of my friends, he looked at me, he said, "Really? Are you concerned about that? A dog missing in his natural habitat?" And I look at him and I say, "You are not connected." Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening.